As a younger man, I had a recurring dream, and it frightened me a great deal. It was an endless void in which I existed, but I didn't have a sense of where I was. I was sort of in the middle of some infinite space, just floating in the middle of nothingness. Now, this dream went on for probably at least a year, and it tired me out. I couldn't get rid of it. I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would literally be afraid. Happened to be having dinner with a person who was a psychologist, and it wasn't for that purpose that we got together. But she had some expertise in the field of dreams, so I asked her what this might have meant. And she said, maybe there's something missing in your life. Maybe you need to color in those spaces with bright colors, vivid objects, and fill the space that's empty for you. Well, I thought that was a pretty good idea, so I tried it. Didn't work. Fortunately, after several months following that dinner, the dream stopped. And they stopped until I had a sense of that same infinite void in 2012. I had a near-death experience at one other time in my life. It's not well documented. It was when I was an infant. And I know about it through correspondence between my mother and her sister. I was apparently not expected to make it as an infant, and there were several letters going back and forth describing the fact that I might not be long for this world. And then there was a letter that said I was significantly improving, and then another one that said that I'm fine. I know I'm very fortunate to have survived that experience. I still don't know exactly what it was, and I don't think there's enough ability to document exactly what happened and how it happened, but I know that that was my first near-death experience. My background is as an actor. I worked in the theater for quite a number of years. I do voiceover work. And I also have a background in healthcare and a knowledge of the healthcare delivery system, particularly with regard to specialty practices, things like outpatient imaging and ambulatory surgery. I've had a great number of acting roles that were very fulfilling to me, and those roles made me feel vibrant and alive. The stage is more or less my home. And the voiceover studio is also my home, not quite as much. And I would say that up until the time that this next near-death experience occurred, I had a pretty fulfilling life. I had my theater background, I had my healthcare background, my voiceover work. I was doing competitive show jumping. I don't know that I was that great at it, but I did it, and I did win some championships. I did all right. I probably could have looked back at the time this near-death experience happened and said, I've had a full life and maybe it's time. But for some reason, it wasn't. And I'll explore maybe some explanations for that as I continue the talk. The date was the 14th of June, 2012. I had no symptoms. I had no knowledge that anything might be wrong. I happened to be sitting at lunch with a physician, and another fellow joined us, and I remember being handed a menu. And that's my last conscious recollection for a period of just about 3.5 days. Now, I have anecdotal evidence as to what happened. This incident is very well documented. There were many, many witnesses all along the way, from start to finish, and right up until I began my second life. I was at a restaurant in Brentwood, and it was quite crowded. There was also a courtyard in that particular complex, and above me there was a yoga studio, a cold press juicery, and a fitness center, and I think there was also a hair salon. Actually, I know there was also a hair salon. So when this incident happened, I was handed the menu, and from what the witnesses tell me, I closed my eyes, and that was it. The physician that I was with apparently thought I was taking a premature nap, or that my company had bored him, and he tapped me on the shoulder, probably a little bit more than just a tap, and I crumpled to the ground. So at that point, CPR was started on me, and the first very fortunate incidence of timing with respect to this was that there was an EMT who was not on duty. I don't think he was even working as an EMT anymore, but he had trained as one and had made a living as one for some number of years. And he was sitting at a table 1 or 2 tables away. So the physician administered CPR, the EMT administered CPR, and neither was able to get a heartbeat. I was without pulse or heartbeat for at least 12 minutes. The ambulance came. The paramedics furiously tried to revive me. I know this because not only do I have the anecdotal evidence, but I have the physical evidence of a coat being ripped to shreds. And 4 days later, a shirt that I was wearing still soaked. I know that that EMT made a furious and brave effort to try to revive me. I also know that the EMT was weeping because he thought I was lost. The physician I was with said that I was turning gray. I know this is not a good sign. When I was in the ambulance, they were able to revive my heartbeat with a defibrillator. And it took only a few minutes to get to the hospital ER, St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. One of the next set of coincidences was at the moment I was taken to the ER, the cardiac physician who would do the procedure on me happened to be walking through the ER. The cardiac cath team was just coming back from lunch. Everyone that needed to be there was there at the moment. Normally that cardiologist would have been on call and would have been 5 to 10 minutes away at minimum, and that would have been the difference between life and death. Also, with regard to the cardiac cath team, they would have had to have been assembled if they were still at lunch, and that would have taken several minutes. But they happened to be there. Apparently, when I was taken to the OR, ultimately, it was a furious scene because I had the bad sense to let my heart stop once again and go into a seizure. The heartbeat was rekindled once again, and from the stories I heard from the techs in the OR, there were scalpels and sutures and all kinds of things flying throughout the room. Didn't mean to cause them quite that level of drama. I only required a stent placement, and I was very fortunate. I had in excess of a 90% blockage of my right coronary artery, which is known as the widowmaker. Back at the restaurant, I understand that even after I was taken to the hospital and all of this effort to revive me was going on, that the people from the yoga studio severely were disturbed with respect to their meditation, and the people drinking their cold juices probably let them go warm. I also know some people at the hair salon took affront with the fact that there was such a spectacle going on right underneath their noses. Not something the civilized people of Brentwood necessarily wanted to be exposed to, but there you have it. I really think post this incident that I have to think about the fact that many people who survive these types of experiences, and there aren't many that, if any, that survive the experience that I have to the extent that I did, but they don't always realize what they do to the people in the moment, because I feel that I was just a passenger and the experience was happening to me and people were assisting to me, but I certainly traumatized a lot of people. Some people that go through this and have to have rehab of any kind sometimes get some level of PTSD. I didn't get any PTSD, but I think I gave more than my fair share, and I hope I've made it up to my friends and loved ones who were part and parcel of this whole experience. Once the procedure had finished and the stent had been inserted, I was on a respirator and in a coma for a period of approximately 3.5 days. Got to the point where the people close to me were asked, who's going to pull the plug? It was originally thought that I was brain dead. And then, if I weren't, that there would be a significant amount of physical rehab and maybe mental rehab that would be necessary for a period of a year or several years, and a chance of a full recovery was almost non-existent. I was not expected to make it. And again, I am sorry to the people that I gave all of that level of PTSD to, because I certainly regret putting them through it. 3.5 days post-incident, one of the neurologists checked, and I did have some response to one of those simple tests where they apply some stimuli to your fingers and your feet. And so it was thought that I wasn't brain dead, but still the extent of damage was expected to be significant if I were to make it. I guess I didn't like that respirator being attached to me, because at the 3.5 day period, I, with a vengeance, tore it out of my mouth and started speaking. I gave the nurses quite a start, I understand. Once that occurred, and I resumed some kind of a waking state, my first recollection is my then girlfriend was there, and she said to me, "You've just had a heart attack and you weren't expected to live." And I said, "Oh, really?" Almost in that tone of voice. I didn't experience any pain at the time that the event occurred. I was not in any pain when I came out into the conscious world once again. And I was very calm, because I recall at the time that she was talking to me, things were very peaceful. The whole experience had been very peaceful. I wanted food. I was hungry. They served me eggs. Those were the best scrambled eggs I ever had. Congratulations to whoever the chef was at St. John's Hospital. I also wanted to watch a movie shortly thereafter, and the first of the Thor movies was out. It was great. Best Thor movie I've ever seen. Only Thor movie I've ever seen, but still, greatest Thor movie. There was a movie out called The Conspirator, I think it was, with Robin Wright. And I loved that movie also. I think there wouldn't have been any movie that I would have seen that I didn't thoroughly enjoy, because I was still alive. But it didn't hit me. It didn't register with me that anything material had really happened to me. It's as if I had gone to sleep and woken up. So what was my experience? What did I feel about all of this? It was lights off. And then 3.5 days later, it was lights on. Except that for a very limited amount of time, and I don't think I've confused my conscious state by planting this thought. I do believe this happened. once again, I saw that endless void. I was floating, disembodied, in this infinite, dark place that had no boundaries. I was floating in infinity, but I wasn't in my body. I was something different from myself, but some level of my essence still existed in that infinite black space. But rather than having the fear that I had as a young man when I had the dreams, there was no fear involved here. There was no concern. There was just a floating feeling in an infinite, dark, dark, dark space. Other people see lights as if they're on a trajectory toward heaven. Other people see friends or relatives that have died, or even animals. Other people hold the hands of Jesus, or Buddha, or Allah, or whomever. And others have conversations with departed loved ones, or are touched by them in some way, shape, or form. I was not. I cannot speak to anything other than that one moment in the endless, infinite void during the entire time that I was not conscious. I've thought sometimes that it would be interesting to be competently hypnotized to see what thoughts might have occurred or what my reality is of what happened during that time that I was not in the conscious world. But I'm afraid that if I did that at this point, 5-some years post, that my own conscious mind would have infiltrated my subconscious and perhaps affect the integrity of what really happened. So it may be too late for that. What is the feeling that I had? It was peace. Now, what is peace to me? Because I was asked one time, did the peace that I felt feel like love? No, it didn't feel like love. It felt like an undisturbed, quiet, calm. There wasn't an emotion. I know we deeply want to feel, and I did too, that this experience created something in me that would allow for there to be a sign to show me what was coming next, to prove what occurred, if there was an end of life or if there was an afterlife. We all want a sign. I was disappointed that I didn't see a light, that I didn't have a tunnel, that I wasn't visited by loved ones, that I didn't see a beloved dog that I had. I wanted to experience what so many other people that I've heard experience during this same type of encounter feel or perceive. I didn't. So I'm still searching for a purpose, I must admit. But the peace that I felt was a purity and a calmness that is almost unlike any other, although I think at some point in our lives, our conscious lives, we've all experienced something similar, but this was a very wonderful, calming, reassuring experience. Again, not a feeling. It was more like a state of being. A state of mind? I don't know. A state of being, for sure. What about miracles? What about randomness? If you are a believer in God, any God, especially a Christian God, you could certainly say that a lot of these circumstances were miraculous. The fact that I was in a public place and not alone in a residence or on the top of a hillside or in an airplane or on a bus or in my car. The fact that I was in a public place, the fact that I was with a physician, the fact that 2 tables away or thereabouts was an EMT, the fact that they could have kept the CPR going the entire time, the fact that my heart was defibrillated successfully after more than 12 minutes and turning gray in the ambulance on the way to the ER, the fact that the cardiac physician was walking through the ER when I came through, the fact that the cardiac cath lab team was coming back from lunch at the time that I was brought into the ER. The fact that post-episode, I had no deficits. Because I'm sure you will know that most people who go through this type of episode with the extent of loss of pulse or heartbeat, people that go through something where the blockage is that severe and the trauma is that severe and the time interval is so long, that they experience either a severe mental or physical motor skill deficit, and I had neither. Also, for people that are in the clinical arena, they already know this, but if you're not familiar, when your heart is beating normally, it sort of looks a little more like a football, expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. When people suffer any kind of significant heart failure or heart attack, there is necrotic tissue that occurs, so dead tissue, and it affects the flow of blood, the cardiac output, if you will. It turns out that my cardiac wall motion study shows a normal output of blood, in other words, a normal flow of blood in and out of the heart and through the body. And if you look at the scar tissue, because there is some in my heart, rather than a line of necrotic tissue, the full area of necrotic tissue, mine looks almost like a perforation, like there's a live tissue, then an area of dead tissue, live tissue, dead tissue, live tissue, dead tissue, live tissue, dead tissue, and so on and so forth. So it allows my heart, the way that scarring occurred, to still pump like a normal heart. I've had no brain deficits, well, none that I didn't have before the incident, for those of you that know me. I didn't have any motor skill functions. I still can't pitch a fastball at 96 miles an hour, but I couldn't before, so nothing really changed. And I find that to be miraculous. And I don't consider myself a man of strong faith, other than when I'm really desperate. But I am a man of strong faith sometimes. And in this case, I choose to believe that this was a miracle and not an act of randomness. Now, what if you are of a highly scientific bent or are a student of probability and statistics? Could this not have been the ultimate randomness? What about the people that win the lottery 2 times in 2 years? 5 million one year, 3 million the next, or whatever. What about the people that get some kind of special circumstance going on? They're in an auto accident in 2001, it rolls over 6 times and they walk away. In 2 years later, they roll over 6 times and they walk away. Is that randomness? Is the person that wins the lottery randomness? Is it not potentially the ultimate randomness? Since this experience, I have become the master of I don't know. While I choose to believe that this is a miracle, because the convergence of all of these things that occurred to me can't, to me, be anything but. And the fact that I had a near-death experience before, and I'll tell you about something that happens subsequently also, just doesn't seem random. But randomness, by its nature, is random. So, is it a miracle? Yes, absolutely. I'm convinced that it is. But is it really? I don't know. Again, if you're a probability and statistics person, if you're a diehard scientific person that isn't open to other phenomena, you're going to say, amazingly random, the choices may be infinitely immeasurable, but still random. I don't know. What about afterlife versus end of life? Was what I experienced the end, or the portal to the end? Or was it the portal to some transitional state that we know of as the afterlife? Again, I am the master of I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that during that 3.5-day period, I existed, and I existed in a physical state and an observable state. And again, this incident here is very well documented. The actual incident happened at a place called the Pan Quotidien at the corner, near the corner of 26th and San Vicente in Brentwood, and the procedure occurred at St. John's Hospital, and that's obviously the ER and the OR and the hospital that I was taken to. So no shortage of witnesses to all of this. So was this a signal that life ends, and it ends in peace? Or was it a moment in time where life doesn't end, a moment of peace occurs, and then one transitions to something else? Because as I said, I existed, I was physically observable, I was monitored. I have no recollection of any thoughts, any dreams, any visions, any physical contact with anything. Nothing during that period other than that endless void moment that I spoke about. Nothing, 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 nothing. No white light, no tunnel, no holding the hand of Jesus, no holding the hand of Buddha, whatever Buddha may have looked at, like he probably had a very small hand. No petting my pets, no anything, nothing. If you want to ask me, come on, really, wasn't there something? No, there was nothing other than that one moment that I spoke about, and there was nothing other than the revelation of what the ultimate peace feels like. So is there a God? Is there not a God? I don't know. Is there an afterlife, or is there an end of life? I don't know. At the end, there is peace. That I know. And whether there is a God, or whether there is such great medical science that I was exposed to at that particular encounter, or whether there was the ultimate randomness, or whether there was something to do with nature, or astronomy, or astrology, or the horoscope, I don't know, but whatever, whomever, or however I came to continue to be, to whomever, whatever, or wherever, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I choose in this case to say there was some higher power. What it was, I don't know. And I do believe, I know, but I can't prove it, that if there is an afterlife, that it is far too complex for us to understand what really happens in that transfer. So things like the Bible and other religious tomes tell us in pictures and parables about things to which we can relate. That we will be in a house, that we will be reunited with our loved ones, that we will be able to hold hands with a deity, that we will be able to walk on a cloud, that we'll see angels playing harps. All of these kinds of things that we can relate to. I don't think any of that really happens. I think those are ways that a higher being, if there is one, can tell us that it's going to be okay and it's going to be a good place. Something that we can relate to and look forward to, because the actual experience of what it really is, if it is fully and totally beyond our understanding. It is only a theory on my part. It is only based on what I went through. It is not a theory that I held before. It is not even something I've really actively thought about before. And I come back to the last statement about the entire experience. I am grateful to be back. And at the end, there is peace. So when I was discharged from the hospital, the physical therapists told me I needed no rehab. I walked, pretty much jogged around the hospital corridor, came home. During this period, I had been an understudy for a lead role in a part in Los Angeles at a 300-seat house. It was a great play. And I had learned my lines, but I had not participated much in the rehearsal process. I'd seen a few rehearsals, learned the lines on my own. And right after I got back home, a few days after, I got a call from the producer. Alan, who was one of the male leads, whom I was the cover for, the understudy, tore his Achilles tendon. Can you do the part? If not, we're going to have to cancel the show because they don't have people going in on book, reading from a script. Or we'll have to delay the opening for a month, and it had three and a half month run. I said yes. And it turned out to be a magical, memorable experience with a great cast. It was a great show, well directed, nice set, nice lighting. Everything was spot on with that particular production. And it was nominated for a Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Best Play Award for that year, up against a lot of larger theaters. I mention it only because of the name of the play, Heartbreak House. So after that experience, I thought, all right, let the second life begin. Christmas and Hanukkah are coming up in less than 5 months, New Year in about 6 months. Will I make it? Probably. How wonderful. And I made it past the year, which is sort of the test period for whether the stent is operating properly, whether or not the blockage has been controlled, whether or not the volume output is still as good as it was immediately post-discharge. So, here I am embarking on my second life. And it turned out to look, other than the Heartbreak House experience, which was magical and also kind of miraculous to me, turned out looking a lot like my first life. So I felt without much purpose. And I also felt, and this wasn't pressure, but almost everybody says something like, did you experience the white light? And then after that, wow, you must really have come back for a purpose. And I went back to the first follow-up visit, I remember early on, post the event, to the cardiology office. All 6 of the physicians in that group, plus the administrative staff, came out, gave me a round of applause, high fives, thumbs up, all of that, because the conventional opinion, or the concurring opinion among the physicians was, this is someone we expected to lose, and you came back. And this is what we do. This is what we're here for. This is why we're here. This is why we exist. This is why we practice, to be able to do this, to be able to see this kind of thing happen. So I felt my own pressure to find a purpose. So one of the things that I thought it might have been, as I wrestled with it, was, of course, love, but not love in the general sense, but love in terms of the fact that perhaps I came back because of this very important relationship in my life. And so I made that the purpose. I must have come back for you. I must have come back out of love and to do something good in this relationship. Well, the relationship ended. So my Fantasyland world was shattered because maybe that wasn't my purpose. And maybe I was putting a little pressure on her also to tell her that she was my purpose. Or even if I didn't consciously say it, to infer it in actions, imply it in actions. So instead of being this fantasy world outcome, I became more of the typical statistics, 50% of marriages end, and I guess 50% of relationships end, and you keep on seeking. So if that's not my purpose, what is? Well, I went around for a while, rudderless, compassless, and thinking that I didn't really have much of a trajectory. Life 2 is pretty much like life 1. If I'm going to experience loss, if it's loss of relationship, or the longer I live, loss of friends, maybe moving to another location, loss of people that I love due to death or injury or some change of circumstances, why am I here? Why do I need to go through this? Can't I go back to that peaceful state that I was in before? Can't I go back to that? Whether it was the end or a transition to something else, maybe I'm ready. Maybe I belong there, and maybe whatever brought me back, randomness or miracles or whatever, maybe it was just to show me that I needed to go back. So I had this desire to be hit by a bus or taken out by a landslide or whatever. I wasn't going to do anything conscious. I don't think that way. I don't want to end things proactively. But I thought, well, maybe it would just be lucky to die in my sleep or to walk off the curb and then boom, that ultimate peace happens after some short moment in time. And I go back to the ultimate resting state. Well, after a few months, I thought, well, this is no way to be. What do you do? What do you do when you think you need a purpose and you can't quite find it? What do you do when you still are confused about why me, and was this a miracle, or was this randomness, and you ask yourself questions like a theologian might, which is, if it were a miracle, then what about religious concepts of free will versus the book of life is preordained? Well, which is it? The thing that I decided to do was to keep going. And that's the thing we all need to do when we're in any kind of crisis or in any kind of defining moment. And I didn't think this so much a defining moment, because the defining moments in my life have been things that either I did proactively or things that I consciously reacted to. Here I was the passenger. I didn't create the circumstances other than maybe fighting for my life to some extent during that 3.5-day period, some level of survival instinct. But keep going. Search for a purpose. Make the most of it. Live your passions, even if you can't do them all the time. Make sure you live them. I'm still acting, I'm still performing, I'm still doing voiceovers, I still have a expertise in the healthcare arena. I still do those things. And the things that I'm most passionate about, which is the theater, which is the live audience experience of being on the stage, I still do that. I want to do that more. I hope to do that more, but I will continue to want to do that more, and I will continue to try to do that more. The same with voiceover work. Pursue your passions. Also, realize that life goes on. You're not that important. You're important to yourself. You may be important, hopefully for a long term, for people that are very, very close to you. But life goes on. During that period that I was gone, but still in the conscious world, people had to pay their mortgages. They couldn't sit in the hospital 24/7. They had to move their cars. They had to go make dinner for their families. They had to go on a business trip. And as much as I would have wanted to say, look, guys, I'm dying. They're about to pull off the plug. Can everybody just please stay here with me, even though I'm not conscious for the whole rest of that time? Can't I be that important right now? No, they still had to pay their mortgage, because if I was gone, they don't want to get foreclosed on. They still had to move their car, because if I was gone, they didn't want to have to pay a $128 ticket. So life goes on. As much as we need to be part of the community, we also have to understand that the individual passions and pursuits that are most important to us are things that we should not be denied, and that people that love us and care about us should not want to deny us those things. Yes, you make compromises. Yes, you make changes to accommodate the people that you're close to. But no, life goes on. Everyone's life goes on. And yours has to go on pursuing the passions and the things that make you happy. And if you don't have a passion, seek it. As far as the relationship, I believe in serendipity. I still do. I'm canceling my Tinder app. I'm going to go do serendipity the way I know how to do it in the three-dimensional world. Going to meet somebody. It's going to happen. I'm seeking. Seeking is a purpose. The thing in this present day world that I'm seeing a lot of when I talk about individual needs, I hear a lot of yelling. People want to be heard. But people that want to be heard and take their individuality and place it so far above the common good that all they are is vox clematis in deserto, they're not being understood. So I think for myself and for the people that think I have anything meaningful at all to say, it would be, yes, assert your individuality, but also speak not so that you can be heard, but you can be understood. And listen. It's very important to be quiet sometimes. It's very important to be silent sometimes and listen to those around you and assess what they're saying, what they're feeling, to have some level of intuition that you can develop so that you can relate to those that are around you to whom you want to be close. How has this changed my conscious life? I think I'm more approachable. I think I'm willing to expose my vulnerabilities more. I think that I make more time for people. I think that I allow myself to be quote-unquote compromised to satisfy people that are close to me, their needs. But instead of resenting that time where I would normally have felt compromised and let me out of here, I go with the flow and I enjoy it as much as possible to make that other person happy and to be in circumstances that she, in most cases she, wants to be in that make her happy. It's now making me happy as well, or more satisfied. And I wouldn't have thought that 5 or 10 years ago. It's opened me up because I want to be part of this community, and I want to relate to people around me. And yes, I want to be loved as well, and I want to give that love, because we don't have a lot to give other than how we relate to those whom we want to keep close. I would suggest that as inconclusive anything I have said might be, it should not in any way, shape, or form shake anyone's belief that they already hold. If you believe in a God that has an afterlife and a heaven that looks the way you picture it right now, my experience does nothing to shake that belief. If you believe solely in science and the ultimate randomness, my experience does nothing to shake that belief. But my experience is my own. There may be others that have shared something similar. This really happened. I've tried to be genuine and not embellish it. And I thank you for the time, for listening to this. So whether you're an atheist, agnostic, a fervent believer, or any level in between, I know all of you can relate to at least one of these, which is good luck, God be with you, and peace be with you. Thank you.